but not only Rome. This is our Saints and Shrines of Italy pilgrimage, and joining us is our good friend Teresa Tamio.
Yes, Steve, fantastical. Walking through the holy doors, immersing ourselves in the deeply Catholic culture of Italy. I'll be joining you and Janet in Florence and Assisi.
Join us this May for the Jubilee year from Milan to Florence and much more, all the way to Rome.
Find the Ave Maria Radio travel tab at avemariaradio.net.
A baby's heart is beating 18 days from conception.
Hello, I'm Marian Koharski, the director of Pro-Life Across America. We're non-political and totally educational. We don't scream or scold. Instead, we help people working through unplanned pregnancies know their options, and we rely on people like you to help with our mission. Check us out on Facebook, YouTube, or at prolifeacrossamerica.org.
Pro-Life Across America, the Billboard people.
He was a mystic and reformer who died at the age of 33.
Matthew Bunson and the Doctors of the Church.
St. Catherine of Siena accomplished something no one thought possible. She convinced Pope Gregory XI to return to Rome after the popes had lived in France for almost the whole of the 14th century. They've been there ever since.
For more about the Doctors of the Church, visit doctorsofthechurch.com.
We are the pro-life generation, passionate about building the culture of life in our healthcare and in our nation. But not all healthcare options are equally pro-life, and some provide morally objectionable procedures. CMF Curo is different. CMF Curo is a pro-life Catholic healthcare ministry providing a pathway for its members to build the culture of life in their healthcare choices, not destroy it. Learn more about CMF Curo at mycatholichealthcare.com. That's mycatholichealthcare.com.
All right, let me draw that parallel that I said I had. It may not be a good one, but it is a parallel. In the early stages of dementia, there's so much of the person's personality left. So people attribute some of the early changes in dementia as them being more difficult, as them being more argumentative or suspicious or quirky. And routinely they'll say things like, well, they've always been that way. That's just who they are. They're just getting more that way as they get older. Not necessarily. In the early stages of dementia, it's really tough to separate out, for many people, what is the effects, the early effects on the personality of dementia, and what is just that person's normal way of conducting themselves. It's tough to do. And I think that's what Paul was saying, that people, for him, couldn't really sort out what was the effect of his disorder and how much of it he had actual volitional control over. Thank you for joining me here on The Doctor Is In. Thanks, Andrew Kruchek. Thank you for spending some time with me. I so much appreciate it. Walk with God. He understands better than even you understand who you are, who we are.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram.
You want, gosh, talk about Thanksgiving plans?
Welcome to Back to the Father, a show about the journey of life focused on our final end, which is God Himself, our loving Father. And now, here's your host, Dave Palmer.
Good afternoon and welcome to Back to the Father here on the Guadalupe Radio Network. I'm Dave Palmer. This is a program that is laser focused on the teachings of St. Thomas Aquinas in his famous Summa Theologica, which he wrote back in the 13th century when he lived between approximately 1225 and 1275. He was a Dominican priest. He is the Doctor of the Doctors of the Catholic Church. He is also the patron saint of all Catholic school education and somebody that, needless to say, I have a great devotion to. So if you enjoy philosophy, theology, if you enjoy, scholasticism and just the Catholic faith in general, if you enjoy life, if you enjoy living, then there's going to be something in this program for you. So thanks for joining us. We are broadcasting across all of the social media platforms of the Guadalupe Radio Network, including YouTube and X and Facebook and TikTok and Instagram. And we are here most Fridays. Last week we had a recorded program because Sissel was at a funeral and I was out at a conference. And next week will be the day after Thanksgiving, so we won't have a program. The following week, we'll be doing Share-a-thons, so we won't have a program. So we'll be back eventually, but we do appreciate that you do find us when we are on. We also have an email list. If you'd like to get on that, and you'll receive an email every Friday that we are doing a show. And even if we're not doing a show, we'll let you know why we're not doing it. And if you want to get on that email list, just email backtothefather@grnonline.com. And I'm joined, as always, with Sissel Anderson, and she is on the other side of the glass in the control room. How are you doing, Sissel?
Hello, I am doing very well.
All right. Interesting topic today, I think.
Yes.
At least I think it's interesting because it's very practical and it applies to every single person. And what it is it's St. Thomas Aquinas' Treatise on Human Acts, subtitled Acts Peculiar to Man, which means that things that only we do, and we are really the only ones that act the way we do, because the irrational creatures don't have free will. The angels have free will, but they don't do actions in the way that we do. They don't have bodies. They don't have passions. They don't have the same kind of sensitive appetites we have. So the way we operate and the way we function is very unique, and no other creatures in the world have the same joy in doing actions like we do, and also in the complications that arise because of them. So I'm calling this program The Dissection of a Human Act, because if you remember back in, I don't know if you did this or not, Sissel, being a homeschooler, I don't know if your mom went out and got like a fish or an earthworm, or I remember that when I was a Jesuit, in science class, we would dissect things. We dissected, I remember an earthworm, and I don't remember exactly. I think a frog, and so you see a frog or an earthworm, and it looks pretty basic. It's just a thing. It's a creature. But then once you open it up, you'll see that there's a whole lot more going on in that frog or that earthworm than meets the eye on the surface. And I think with human actions, it's the same way, because we might say that a human action is good or bad or moral or evil or, great. But, on what standard do we say that? Because it's so hard to just say an action is good or bad. So, for example, if I were to tell you, and this is not true, but if I were to tell you that this morning I slapped a man across the face. Okay.
I saw it.
No, you did. It wasn't Ken Loney. And it wasn't Tom Sinteri. It didn't actually even happen. But if I said that, you'd probably have an initial reaction of like, whoa, man, but you don't know anything about it. You don't know why I did it. You don't know what my intention was. And so that's an example of where a human action has to be dissected in order to know whether it was good or evil. Like, for example, you don't know how hard I slapped him. What if he had a mosquito in his cheek and I was just like, boom, I need to kill the mosquito? What if he was, he walked into my family and he was about to assault my kids and I slapped him across the face and said, get out of my house? Okay. I mean, what if he slapped me in the face first, So anyways, it's kind of interesting, and, you may not give it that much thought, but it's one of the reasons why St. Thomas Aquinas is very, very used by Catholic, in particular, counselors, family therapists, I would say even, psychologists and psychiatrists, even if they're not Catholic, because he had such a unique and interesting understanding of the human person, as we're going to highlight today. We're going to do it kind of a broad look. I don't have any slides. I'm not going to show you, quotes or excerpts from the Summa, but just kind of a general look at it. So if you are out there and you are watching this on one of our platforms like YouTube or X or Rumble or whatever, Facebook, let us know who you are, where you are, and go ahead and ask any questions as you go along. We typically have
By the way, Keith has said that it's you. That it was him, that you slapped him. He's like to say that.
Oh, Keith said that?
Yes, it was me.
I've only had a couple of opportunities to slap Keith Downey, and I've only been in his presence, and neither time did I take that opportunity.
You should have. That was the opportunity. I think.
Why would anybody slap Keith Downey? He's
I have no idea.
He's like the nicest guy in the world.
This is true.
I got to talk to his wife and say, is he actually that nice? Is he actually that? Yeah. I wonder if I would get the same answer as the people that listen to Morning Joy. All right. So again, thanks for joining us. The dissection of the human act. Does that seem intriguing to you, Sissel? Please, it doesn't.
No. I think it's very interesting for sure. I mean, I asked Dave, he walked past my office earlier, and I was like, "What are we talking about?" And he's like, "The dissection of the human act." And I was like, "The what now? Like, what are we doing?" So I think for nothing else, I'm just excited to see how it breaks down and what St. Thomas Aquinas has to say. Yeah,
which is interesting because Keith, host of Morning Joy, is probably thinking, "Dave, that's not what you talked about on the show. On Tuesday, I talked about a completely different topic. I was relating the segment on Morning Joy on Tuesday morning to the feast this Sunday of Christ the King, because I knew that we were going to talk about this on the show today, but I didn't think this could be handled in a brief little 13-minute segment, because it's a little bit nuanced and there's a lot. So I just was like, you know what? And I also wasn't prepared. Okay, so that's the other
Dave
reason,
was exercising
right?
some wisdom here.
Yeah, so I did, just as a follow-up of my segment on Tuesday, I don't know if you heard that. I always wake up every Wednesday morning and listens to Sissel's segment. I'm sure you do the same on Tuesday. I'm kidding. No pressure.
Totally.
No shame. But I was, now let me just, since you didn't listen to the segment, that's okay. That's okay.
I always catch up on
problem.
them later. Like I watch them on
Of
YouTube
course.
later is what I do.
Yeah, you speed it up, right?
Yeah. I put it at like 4x speed.
But what my point was, and Keith came back with a really interesting question, which on some fronts it may seem kind of like a challenging question, but I really appreciated it. My point was that this Sunday we celebrate Christ the King, and it's actually called the Solemnity of Christ the King. Of Jesus Christ, King of the Universe. Well, like what a title! I mean, King of the Universe. I don't think there's anybody that's ever walked the earth that's had that title. I mean, like King of the entire universe, except for Jesus Christ. And so my point was, this is the last Sunday of the liturgical calendar. Next Sunday we begin Advent. That starts a whole new calendar year. So it's the church's last opportunity to make an impression on us before the church calendar year ends, and it's Christ the King. I mean, that's like the last thing the church wants to say, but I think most of us are already looking forward. We're planning, Advent, we're planning Christmas, and so I think in many ways this feast, this solemnity, kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, and people don't pay much attention to it. So I kind of explained that on Morning Joy, and Keith comes back with a question. And again, it sounds like it's challenging, but I love the question. Guess what he asked me?
Literally no idea what he asked you.
All right. He said, Dave, do you and your family celebrate Christ the King on Sunday? And I looked at him and I said, well, of course we do, Keith. No, I'm kidding. I said, no, we don't.
But we should.
I said, we don't, but I bet you I'm not alone because of the reasons I've already explained. I think most of us are already thinking about Advent. We've never done anything on Christ the King Sunday.
That's a good point.
So we started brainstorming, and he said, either him or I think it was Keith that said, hey, how about like a king cake? Like
for Christ the King, yes.
And I said, I don't think you can buy them because those are always like around Mardi Gras time, right, in the spring. But it would be a nice tradition to make king cake. Somebody could make a mint off it if they sold king cakes on Christ the King Sunday, and Catholic families all around the world could celebrate, So, and I said, well, I'm going to go talk to my wife about it this morning, Keith. And I actually did. I said, you know what? We don't celebrate Christ the King. And we didn't make any official plans. But do you have, honestly, I mean, you've only been a Catholic.
I've only been a Catholic for so long, but I've not ever celebrated Christ the King Sunday the way it probably should have been. I've definitely tried for other liturgical feasts. I've tried to make more of an effort to actually take time out of my day to do something. So like when Pentecost comes around, we usually do like a birthday party for the church. It's like the celebration of the church.
Yeah.
But that's a good one. That you're making me thinking about. I'll have to add that into some. We'll have to do something on Sunday.
I'm sharing the Keith Downey guilt that he shared with me on Tuesday.
Yes.
Now I'm sharing it with you.
Sharing it with me.
When I first got into Catholic radio, I read a book, and I think I actually interviewed the author, and her name was Meredith Gould. I'll never forget. It was called The Catholic Home. And the whole point, and she was a convert from the Jewish faith, and of course there's a lot of liturgical similarities between the Jewish faith and the Catholic faith. And so when she became a Catholic, she wanted to celebrate the feast days, and so she wrote a book about it. Exactly the kind of thing you're talking about, sis. So is how do we celebrate Pentecost? Well, that's kind of an easy one because it's a birthday, so you have a birthday party. But the birthday of the Blessed Mother, the Blessed Virgin Mary, and all these different feast days that we can celebrate. But even after reading that book, I'm like, these are a great idea. I'm going to do this. And then, of course, we didn't. But you fall into the normal ones of Easter and Christmas and, that kind of thing.
I think just starting with one simple one at a time, or even just simply remembering. I know my mom always had us for on she said that, I don't know if you ever did this name day saints. Did you ever do anything for that? My mom grew up with that.
Mine would be what, David? Or?
Yeah, you'd find, and so like for me, it's Cecilia, so Saint Cecilia, which is actually yesterday. It was like, it's right around this time. Suddenly forgetting when it is exactly. But, my confirmation saints, my mom would do a little special thing for those days, like get a little treat or get a little, like a prayer card for that. And so it'd be a little something special. Like my sister and I, my brother, he had Saint Francis of Assisi. We totally made him like a dinosaur cake. I don't know why we did dinosaur, to be completely honest, because we're thinking of him and animals, but for some reason we went with the animal. We did dinosaur. But yeah, just doing fun things like that just to commemmorate a feast day as well is a simple way to start.
The dinosaurs loved St. Francis of Assisi.
I think they would have had they been around at the same time.
Yeah, they did. They did. The other one that I think Monsignor Pope was talking about this earlier this week, or I heard it on Catholic radio somewhere, is celebrating your baptism day.
Oh, that's a good one.
And I dare say very, very few Catholics do that, but it's really more important than probably even your birthday.
Sure, yeah.
Because you're incorporated into the church.
It's your rebirth day, kind of, Yeah.
Anyways, what does this have to do with human acts? Well, not a whole lot, but it has to do with what I talked about on Morning Joy. But let's go ahead and get into this whole thing on human acts and putting it into context, because one of the things I love to do with the Summa Theologica is teach and understand myself the way that it is organized. Okay, and I talk about this a lot because if you don't understand the structure of the Summa, it also kind of fits into the structure of our very lives, because the first part of it at the very beginning talks about God, and the very end of the Summa is about God, and our lives are really a journey from God and back to God, and that's why this program is called Back to the Father, because it's a journey back to the Heavenly Father from whence we came. And so in the first part of the Summa, you learn about God and that He exists and what His attributes are and the Blessed Trinity and providence and the governance of the world and that kind of thing. And then the angels and human nature and the fall, the Adam and Eve and some of these things. And then when you get into the second part, which is called Prima Secunda, the first part of the second part, the very first thing he gets into is a man's last end. So what is our last end? Well, our last end is God. Our last end is beatitude, and hopefully it's union with God and being united to Him forever. And Thomas, following on Aristotle, says, well, our last end is happiness. And happiness is beatitude, and beatitude is God, right? And God is goodness, and that's why our entire life is spent chasing goodness, chasing good things, whether it be a hot fudge sundae or marriage or religious life or a walk along the beach. We're constantly thinking and acting upon good things. All right, so that's a good way to get into the treatise on human acts. And again, if you're watching and you have a comment or a thought, please put it in there. Sissel is watching the comments, and she'll share with everybody what your comments are, and that can be a good little launching pad about some tangential conversations that we can have. So in the first part of the second part of the Summa, Prima Secunda, there's a treatise on human acts, and it's questions 6 through 21, so approximately 15 questions. And every question has a number of articles. And I'm just going to kind of go through this pretty quickly about how Thomas kind of goes through the dissection of human actions and how it ties into our last end and our will and our intellect and that kind of thing. So the first thing he says is that actions are the proper actions to human beings are voluntary. And not every single action that we do is voluntary. Like if I, just kind of scratch my head like I'm doing right now, that didn't really take any voluntariness. It was more just kind of, just something I did. It didn't take a lot of thought or, free will or something like that.
Now everyone at home just scratched their heads too, I think, because you brought it up.
Or you wipe your brow or, you do something like that. But we're unique in that because our actions are voluntary. But then again, so are angels. But he asks a lot in the Summa, well, do we share this with irrational animals? And really, they don't have any voluntary actions. They're pretty much pre-programmed by God to kind of do as God wants, through instinct and just kind of being directed to their end in a perfect manner. And then the next thing he says is that we have to take note of circumstances, kind of like what I said before about me slapping the man in the face earlier, today, which I didn't do. But if you don't know the circumstances, if you didn't know where I was, why I did it, how I did it, that kind of thing, well, you're not going to understand the act. I often use an example in my class when I teach high school kids of a woman walking into Planned Parenthood because she has an appointment with Planned Parenthood. Well, is she doing anything wrong? Well, we don't know. She may be walking in to talk to the director about not doing abortions. She may be an evangelist. She may not be there getting an abortion. So it's one of the reasons why we are told don't judge, don't judge actions, because we just don't always have all the facts in order to do that. All right, so then he goes into the will. What is a good definition of the human will? Would you Sissel's like, it's kind of like when you're in class and you don't want to make eye contact with a teacher, because
yeah, but I'm the only stupid.
I know you're like the only one here. I remember, did I tell you the story about when I was in college and I was in botany class? Freshman year.
No, I don't think so.
Freshman. Okay, do you know what botany
yeah,
is?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm in college. I'm a freshman at Hendrix College in Conway, Arkansas. Wet behind the ears, just little 18-year-old kid out of high school, and I signed up for my classes, and it's like whatever. It's kind of you take this class and this class.
Sure.
For some reason, I end up in botany class, and there's this old kind of curmudgeonly teacher who had been there for like 120 years or something. And so he comes into class, and he's the kind of teacher that like everybody's afraid of because he's kind of intimidating. So he kind of looks at the whole class and he says, "What is botany?" and I was thinking to myself, I have no idea.
You're like, that's why I'm in this class, man.
I didn't even know what it was. And then it's like no eye contact. And then he was going to start calling on people. And I was like, man.
No, so that's terrible. Okay, well, I can give a you said, what was the definition of the human soul? Is that what you said?
Yeah. And then I said body,
humans will.
Yeah.
Will.
Okay, so yeah,
human will.
Human will.
Not
yeah.
soul. Oh,
yeah.
gosh, that would have been more intense.
Well, the will's part of the soul.
Yeah, sure. I'm thinking that it's something, our will is what our desire is and what we choose to do. Would that be a good definition of the will?
Now, it's interesting that you use the word choose, because we're going to talk about that, because choice and will are different.
Oh.
And of course, choice is a real hot topic and word in our culture today. But so if you put a hot fudge sundae in front of me and I'm like, man, I want that hot fudge sundae, is that an exercise of my will? Did I exercise will by desiring that hot fudge sundae?
Yes. Now I'm like confused. Would it be the choice then if you were to take and actually have the hot fudge sundae? Would that be the choice aspect of it?
Well, you did more than you choose it. You actually got it, right?
Okay.
Now you're enjoying it, and so there's like enjoyment.
But I chose to reach for it and say, yes, I'm going to have this sundae.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, right. You chose. So,
but would will be desiring?
So, well, with the hot fudge sundae, there's two things at work, right? And this is how it's so cool. I love the way St. Thomas thinks. Is that first of all, you have what Thomas would say, a sensitive appetite towards the hot fudge sundae. But if your dog was here, he would have the same thing, right? He has a sensitive appetite. He wants it. In fact, you probably have to slap that dog to get him away from your sundae, right? Now, but the will is an intellectual appetite.
Got it.
And so this is where we differ from the dog, is that, as I mentioned in my class, we can look at the sundae and our intellect can know what it is. Okay, so we have in our mind hot fudge sundaeness. Okay, so that's an intellectual conception of what it is. A dog can't do that. A dog just reacts. But so did we. We reacted. But that's why, and this is the interesting thing, is that in order for us to make a good choice about whether we're going to eat the hot fudge sundae, how much of it we're going to eat, we need temperance on the one hand, which is a moral virtue, but we also need prudence, which is an intellectual virtue. So you have to, there's two things going on with us. There's a sensitive appetite and an intellectual appetite, and there's also two virtues. There's a moral virtue to moderate the sensitive appetite, and then there's a intellectual virtue to apply reason to the intellectual appetite.
I feel like I need a table for this. Like, you need to have lines drawing, like, and separate.
I had a kid in my class yesterday, and he said, I think we need to take this course twice to understand it. And I said, great, sign up for next year if you want to.
I understand this kid.
Yeah, you can, but okay. So anyway, so the will is an intellectual appetite. Okay, it's not just that gut, like I want to take a nap, or I want to eat a hot fudge sundae, or I want to eat a. We have donuts on Mondays here at the office. Although I hear the plan for that is changing up a little bit.
We literally just had to have a meeting about this, being like, we can't do donuts every week because that's not good for our temptation to eat a lot of donuts. And so we're shaking it up. It's going to be a snack every week, and you can have fruit or healthier things too, to not have donuts every week, so that we don't all gain 20 pounds by the end of the year.
I was in my office minding my own business, so working away, and I hear this discussion down the hall about, I heard Joe say, I maybe we only do this once a month. And I'm thinking, okay, what are we doing once a month? And I realize you guys are talking about the donuts. All right, Joe thinks there ought to be a chapter in the Summa. I'm sorry, I stole your thunder.
No, you're okay.
Okay.
Oh yeah, my job. Joe Loney on YouTube says St. Thomas needed a chapter on hot fudge sundaes, and I agree with this. And Joe is also the one who's telling us to not have donuts every week. But so
interesting.
We have very deep conversations here in the office. Kind
of a paradox. So, all right. So now that we know what the will is, it's an intellectual appetite and how it differs from the sensitive appetite. I know people all across this the fruited plain right now are thinking, dude, it's Friday afternoon. I just want to.
They all just want to go eat hot fudge sundaes now.
Yeah, it's like, no, I want to wind down, man. And you're like throwing all this brainy stuff at us. It's Friday afternoon.
You need something at the end of the work week. You need to just like pump it up a little bit to get you through the rest of the day. Re-engage your brain. It's kind of mentally shuts out.
Your brain's starting to get a little sluggish.
Yeah, you're just like, I'm done.
You're starting to get a little dozy at work, and this is like your intellectual little shot. Like a sip of coffee in the morning that gets you going, right? All right, so what moves the will? All right, so if we have a will, we have an intellectual appetite, what moves it? Okay.
Oh, boy.
So these are the options that...
Oh, it's a multiple choice?
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to give you a bunch of options, okay? You tell me which ones.
Okay.
Does the intellect move the will?
Okay.
Does our sensitive appetite move the will? Does the will move itself? Do heavenly bodies? I know Cecil's thinking, I'm never going to remember all these.
I'm trying to write them down.
Or does God move the will? All right. Okay. So
hold on a second. Hold on.
Feel free to play along at home if you are watching this, and let us know what you think. Okay, I'll repeat them.
Please.
Does the intellect move the will? Does the sensitive appetite? Does the will move itself? Does a heavenly body, like, the planets and the moon, move the will? Or does God move the will? Okay, so we're going to give you 30 seconds to think this one over at home, and then we're going to reveal the answer. Okay, and it's a little bit of a trick question.
Oh. No.
So, no, come on.
No.
As if it's not hard enough, right?
I have no chance.
As if this isn't hard enough.
Wait.
Okay.
Wait, did I just figure out the trick? I probably didn't. I have an idea though.
Okay, well go ahead.
Oh, okay,
your 30
go ahead.
seconds are up, and if
what if I want more time? Okay,
so
my first, let me walk you through. Actually, it's probably a bad idea to walk you through the way my brain works, because that's not that'll confuse everybody. But my first thought was to say intellect, move the will, right? That was my first thought, and that was what I was going to go with, because none of the other answers sounded this one just sounded a little bit better. However, you said it's a trick question. So now my question is it all of the above?
Ah, very good. All right. Yeah, exactly. So all the above can move the will. The heavenly bodies, they can influence, like the moon influences the world. I mean, influences the tides and
the werewolves.
The werewolves. Yeah. I mean, I know every time there's a full moon, you can find me out in my backyard howling. I mean, it's just crazy.
All the time. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Neighbors are calling the police, but no, I mean, so there's some influence on all of these to some degree, like the example of the hot fudge sundae. If the intellect had not identified and what Thomas would call apprehended the hot fudge sundae, the will would never have been able to have a desire for it in the first place. And so, it's really fascinating to see how the intellect and the will work together, right? And that's one of the mistakes that philosophers make down the road. And if you know anything about me, you know that I like to fit St. Thomas Aquinas into the larger picture of philosophy. And so how does he differ from, Aristotle or Plato or Kant or Hegel or Schopenhauer or, Sartre and that kind of thing? But what's going to happen is that in after Aquinas, you're going to have some philosophers that latch on to the intellect or the reason, like Descartes and the rationalists, and then you're going to have some that focus almost exclusively on the will, like Friedrich Nietzsche or Arthur Schopenhauer. Okay, so it's like you're splitting the human person, the human soul, into two, when it was always meant to work as a composite and always work together. And so one of the beauties of Thomistic philosophy is to show how the intellect and the will work together harmoniously, and that they're not in opposition to each other, but they work together in order for a human person to reach his final end. All right, so ultimately, Aquinas says the principal mover of the human will is God, right? And then you might say, oh, wait a second, doesn't that take away our free will? Yeah, in some ways it does, because you think about it, if God is goodness itself, and everything in the world participates in God's goodness without exception, right? Everything that's created is good, because if it wasn't good, God wouldn't have created it. So we're surrounded by all these good things. We're attracted to them, and so they all have a participation in God. And so God is luring us to himself. And so it's like if I said, so are you going to take a summer vacation next summer, do you think?
I'm going to take one probably like May, early summer, late spring, yeah.
Do you know where you're going yet?
I do. I'm going to Florida because a friend of mine, it's a kind of a graduation gift thing, so she wants to go to Disney.
Oh, cool.
So I'm going with...
So I think we're going to Florida as well. So, okay, we got that in common. We're going to be going to Florida. So what happens is that now you have the end in mind, right? So, and that's a good thing, because I don't think you'd go to a destination if you weren't excited about it, right? It's a vacation. Right. It's a good thing. So now every decision you make is geared towards that end. And so it's almost kind of backwards. You would think you take steps and then you get to the end. It's actually the end that drives all the decisions you make. And so in that way, God being goodness and our final end, our final happiness is there. And so we're directing everything to that final end, which is God. And so all the decisions we make are geared. So in that way, God being goodness himself is the principal mover of the human will. And also he created the human will. So he moves it in that regard as well. Okay, the manner in which the will is moved, and it's moved of necessity in that everybody wants to be happy without exception. Everybody seeks the good. And so we don't have free will with regard to our the necessity of wanting to be happy and wanting to be good. We only have free will with regard to the things that are in between the final end and where we are now, okay? So I'll just go over these real quickly. Intention, choice, counsel, consent, use. Let's talk about choice. And this is so important because somebody says oh, I'm pro-choice. Well, we realize what the heck does that even mean? You're pro-choice about what, and then we know that what they mean is they're pro-abortion. They think a woman has a right to choose abortion, right? But when you're making a choice, it's only having to do with a means and not the end. And so you have to dig a little bit deeper and say, well, okay, you're pro-choice about what, and what is the final end here? The final end, I guess, in choice would be the death of a child. And so Thomistic philosophy here really helps us with this cultural issue, because you have to dig a little bit deeper. But of course, they really don't want to do that, because they don't really want to face the fact of what they actually are choosing, right? So those are the means. And then let's see. One other thing that's really interesting, and then if anybody has any comments, we can entertain those, is when it comes to the will, there's two things. There's what Thomas calls the object, and there is the intention, right? So an example that he uses in the Summa is somebody giving alms at the church. But if the intention of why he's doing it is not good, then the action becomes evil. So if you look at anything good that a person does, you have to not only look at the actual action or what they're doing, but you also have to look even more so at why they're doing it, right? I mean, have you ever like done something externally good, but really the intention was different? I can think an example in my life, but I remember when I first, and I don't know if this is bad or not, but when I first got involved in my Catholic faith when I moved to North Texas back in the late 90s, I was invited to get involved in this Young Sarah group that was meeting at St. Monica Church, and they were doing adoration, and it was a wonderful group, and many of my friends to this day are from that group. But I remember I wasn't that interested in my faith that much at that time, and they had adoration, and I had really never done adoration, and I didn't think it just did not appeal to me. But I liked the people, and I liked going out afterwards because we'd go out and get a drink. And of course, I was single, so I was interested in meeting girls, and so I was going to adoration, but not really for the right reason. I wasn't going to adoration at that time in my life to adore Jesus and to out of my love for God. But there were these other reasons why I was doing it. And so that would be an example of when, somebody looks from the outside and says, "Oh, look at Dave Palmer. He is such a holy guy. Every Wednesday night he goes to adoration for an hour."
Listen, when I was in high school, I definitely went to daily mass because there was a guy I liked that was going to daily mass too.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very normal thing.
Yeah. So I mean, but that in itself is not a bad thing, right?
No,
yeah.
Like, so it's good that you were there in adoration or going to daily mass. However, it's not also like
Yeah. So I mean, then you look at something else like, let's say, God forbid, somebody goes to daily mass because after mass they hang around. When the priest and everybody leaves, he steals stuff from the church.
Right.
Okay, so that would be like an extreme example of like, this is an evil action. The guy going to mass, the actual action is good, but the intention is so bad that it makes the whole action not only bad but evil because he's stealing, right? From the church. So that's an example of the fact that we got to look at a lot of different things. And so let's see. So that's what he calls the interior act of the will. And then most of these like kind of median things that are involved in human actions, like the consent and the intention and the choice, they're more involved with the will than the reason. But the reason comes in finally commanding the action, like you said earlier in the program about like, oh, if I actually reach out and grab the hot fudge sundae, right?
Yes.
So that would be like you're commanding the action, and then you get to enjoy the hot fudge sundae, and that would be the completion of the action. All right, well, by golly, that just about does it. I hope that at this point in your life, a little bit more about human actions than you did 40 minutes ago. And if anybody is out there and you have any questions or comments, we can go ahead and entertain those. And I know I typically can only look at like one platform at a time. But
I do a lot of toggling over here. So
oh, do you?
I'm
okay.
watching it. Don't you worry.
Yeah, and I noticed that Keith has taken some of the little clips from this. Do you go and watch the shorts very often?
You know what's crazy? So, Dave, I do. I am, unfortunately in this Generation Z, meaning that I am on YouTube quite frequently, and I watch shorts pretty frequently. And my favorite thing in the world is I'm like just going through the shorts, just like, just whatever the algorithm brings my way. And all of a sudden, I hear your my voice pop at me.
Oh,
it's
that
very
right?
entertaining because, like, I'm watching.
And you're not even on like the GRN show.
No, I go from.
Okay.
I'm subscribed, so that's part of the reason why they come through. But like, I'll be watching a cooking video, and all of a sudden, like, next thing I hear, and it's really fun. But yeah, he's been posting some of them, and I think they've gotten some pretty good response so far.
So let me tell you some of them that have gotten some. One of these this is yours, Sissel. 844 views. Are we obligated to forgive those who?
Keith took like the most Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So yeah, I think if it hits 1,000, by I think by GRN standards, it's pretty good. That one's bumping up on 1,000 there.
Yep.
I'll just kind of go through some of the other ones that I think there's Controversial Mary movie coming to theaters.
Yeah, that one's gonna do well. Yeah.
1.3 thousand views. Let's just see if any of them just like knock. Okay, there's
Yes.
one. There's one of mine. Look at that. One of ours. It was from the Back to the Father show. What do all Americans agree on?
Oh yes.
1.1 thousand views. All right, good for us. And let's see. Are you scrolling the same thing I am?
Scrolling.
Okay.
I know Sarasota's usually do pretty well. I was one up here.
Yeah, there was one of Sarah's.
About 1,000 or so as well.
Yeah, I saw one of hers earlier that, let's just see if there's any like knock it out of the park. Okay, oh, look at this. Inspiring 9-year-old altar server.
Oh, yes.
1.4 thousand. Dude, I don't remember seeing that one.
Yes, it's about a little boy with Down syndrome, I think, who's an altar server.
Oh, really?
It was a really sweet video
awesome.
that went viral. And so Keith just like talks about it. I found the magical button, Dave, that organized it by the most popular.
Well, you're taking away my ability to scroll.
Well, I'd say, so
okay.
our top one is still going to be the one where we talk about Tammy Peterson, because you name drop like that, and that you talk about.
How many does that have?
5,000
Oh, really?
views. So our top one for the channel
Hey, let's just
is
say
about
Tammy Peterson a bunch of times. And that,
Tammy Peterson, Tammy Peterson.
Joe Rogan,
Make us go
Tammy
viral.
Peterson, Pope Francis. Let's just, who
let's
else
go
is big
viral.
in the news?
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes.
Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest one right there. Donald Trump.
But yes, I think that's but you have quite a few. The philosophy ones do really well on YouTube, I noticed.
Look at this one. Is our culture derailing like a train wreck? 9 views. Man, that one like totally bombed. No, like nobody cares. See, I thought that's kind of an intriguing
I think
title.
so too. But it could be so many different things. It could be when it was posted. It could, you just never know. There's something more popular going on at the time.
You are
It's
so
just
nice.
I'm very nice. I'm trying to be very nice.
Yeah, I think
Do you
it's
know how many
Keith's
mine
fault.
that are like 0, views? It's totally fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so go ahead. You've got the list.
Yes.
Any others that pop out? What's like the biggest one?
The biggest one for us for a short on YouTube is the a clip. It was actually a very early one that Keith did about the Mother Cabrini movie coming
really?
out. So it's a 10,000 plus views on it.
That's not Back to the Father?
Oh no! I thought
Oh
you
no,
just said
that's
general.
Gian. Okay,
Gian,
no,
sorry.
no.
For
I'm
Back
sorry.
to the Father, the top one is the Tammy Peterson one. The next one is, and now this one might be from your Thinking Out Loud segment actually, but this one is Jesus sacrificed in the Mass?
Oh wow.
Modern problems have philosophical roots.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one. Yeah.
And then where is your next one? I know I saw it recently. Oh yeah. Then the next one I think is St. Thomas said what?
That's about stealing, I think.
Oh, that's right. I remember that one. That one's from Thinking Out Loud. And then the next one I think is the what Americans all agree on.
Oh wow, that
yeah.
one. Yeah.
And then after that, it kind of just goes. Yeah. Then it kind of filters down from there.
So the biggest one for GRN was the 10,000. You say. And that was on the Cabrini movie. And then what are there any others that are like above 5,000?
Yeah, the one with Father, oh gosh, he's the one who the military priest, Father, what's his name? Pomposello, something like that. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
He talks about recruiting priests for the army.
Remember, he came in. We did an interview with him
we
here.
did an interview here.
And he did Beatitudes. I mean, yeah.
I will say I think the our Instagram has much higher views on some of the
do they
reels because
really?
it's more. So like we have
Do you
some
have
that
access to that? Okay. What does that
the
look
reels are some of our most popular ones are in fact like 36,000. The Beauty of the Byzantine Church.
Wow, I would not have thought that would have gotten that many. That's our top one?
It's one of our top ones. I don't know if it's a top. I'm trying to see if I can organize
And
it
was
the
that,
same
is
way.
that with Keith on Morning Joy?
Yes, that is Keith. There's this one. I don't remember. This one went. I remember. So I get the notifications for these because I'm linked in our Instagram profile, and this very sweet lady that Justine, I think is her name, came on Morning Joy, and she just talked about how she's a convert and that the Catholicism is like the best kept secret and that it's so beautiful and there's so much beauty in it. And man, that one blew up. We're talking
really?
about like probably 50,000 views. And the thing is, I think the reason it kept blowing up is people kept arguing in the comments. So the video kept popping up. So yeah, it did very well. It's like there's a whole bunch of comments back and forth, but we're talking about like 2,600 people liking it. It's a very.
So when somebody comments on it, it kind of pushes it back up.
Yeah, kind of bumps it back up into the like, oh, this is popular. Let's keep showing it. So yeah, those are some of the top ones. One about the miracle at Carlo's tomb, talking about Blessed Carlo.
Yeah, some of these don't make much sense. Like, okay, here's one. I'm still on YouTube Shorts. Are video games evil? to me, that's a pretty provocative, interesting question. 82 views.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it doesn't make much sense. What catches on and what doesn't? But I'm sure there's some people that just have this down to a science as far as what's going to really catch on and what isn't, right?
Yeah, and it does in fact have to do with like the platform it's posted on, because sometimes they'll post both. They'll post videos on both like YouTube and Instagram, and one will do really, really well on one and not on the other. It's very interesting. There's a whole art that is what we have Keith Downey for, because he's so much better.
He's good at it. He's very good. Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know that there are any other questions or comments from anybody out there, but I think we're going to bring this ship into the dock and close out the Back to the Father show. So we kind of covered a few things today. That last part was just kind of looking at, I actually kind of like doing that, and it also brings attention to some of the social media pages that the GRN has and some of the things that perhaps people are watching and saying, I think I'm going to go check that out.
You should.
And then we also talked about the fact that this Sunday is the Solemnity of Jesus Christ, King of the Universe. Go out and get a king cake, celebrate, and if you get the piece of cake with the king in it, make sure you don't swallow and choke on it. Okay, it's not I just don't want to get
You don't
sued.
want to get sued because we didn't warn people.
We've
covered our bases.
Given that disclaimer, don't swallow the king. And but it is
Happy Thanksgiving.
It is, happy Thanksgiving. And so
if you're American,
coming around,
and you can be thankful even if you're not American.
I remember that. It's funny you say that because, of course, Paula, my wife, is not from America. She's an American now, and when she came over, I was kind of sad that in Europe they don't have Thanksgiving, because I love Thanksgiving.
It's such a great holiday.
Now, it is such a great holiday, and it doesn't come with a lot of the trappings of gifts and
you just got to make a good meal, share a meal together.
Yeah, and not that I obviously I love the religious celebrations, but it doesn't have that pressure of keep Christ in Christmas, and people get upset because people are.
It's
you can commercialize it because it's not a religious holiday.
Right, you can almost. I say almost because we can hardly agree on anything these days, but you could almost say most Americans like Thanksgiving as a holiday, just in general. Getting together and have a reason to get together with their families and to have a good meal and talk with one another.
It's funny because there have been some people, I don't hear this that much now, but have tried to make controversy out of Thanksgiving because of like the early
of course.
Were the Pilgrims really eating beside the Indians and having harmony and all that, or were they all killing each other and stuff? But anyways, we do hope that you have a very happy and joyful Thanksgiving. And thank you for watching the program. We will not have a Back to the Father the next 2 weeks for reasons I explained before. Next week is the day after Thanksgiving, and we're off. And then the following week, we're going to have our Rejoice Christmas Share-a-thon beginning on December 2nd, going through December 6th. So please prayerfully consider supporting the Guadalupe Radio Network with a donation.
And shout out Back to the Father when you do,
All right. That's happened a few times, hasn't it?
It has, actually.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So God bless you. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you for watching Back to the Father here on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for Back to the Father. And don't forget, the glory of God is the human person fully alive. If you have comments about the show, email Dave Palmer at grn